Josh?
Yes.
Hello there, it's Nick Beggs.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Very well, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
No problem.
Well, awesome. Well, we're here to talk about the brand new album from the Mute Gods, Tardigrades Will Inherit the Earth. And I just want to say off the bat, thank you for making one of the most realistically depressing albums of 2017.
Thank you, it's my honor.
I mean, when going with that direction, there's obviously a lot of ground to cover, and there's no shortage of inspiration going on in the world right now. But how did you decide what topics to focus on with the second album?
Well, I made a deal with myself, and that was that I would write for these projects, for the Mute God records, on subjects that I had strong opinions on, and things that I felt quite passionate about. So I kind of had my agenda clearly set out from day one, to be honest with you, and I suppose that's the way I'll continue with it. Of course, doing that, you can offend a lot of people because I'm giving my opinions, which are diametrically opposed to quite a high percentage of the population. But nevertheless, at 55, I don't feel in a position to be a shrinking violet.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be too. I mean, when I fell in love with the first album last year, I just loved the social commentary that came with it, because I think it's a voice that really needs to be heard. And with the way things have gone back in 2016 after the release of the album worldwide, having this for the second album is definitely a voice that still needs heard.
Yeah, I figured that there's a lot of people who also agree with me, and the voice of reason is very often shouted down or not paid attention to in many situations. So I feel that in some ways you have to become a bit more gnarly and forthright and bellow your message.
And did it feel that way with everything that you saw last year, that it had to become more vocal?
Yeah, I think it's very important to stand up and be counted for what you believe, what's important to you at this time, because there's a lot of ground being lost to extremist thinking and unreasonable thought. And my feelings are that I have now a platform to make my voice heard. And I'm sure I will alienate a lot of people, but I'm totally prepared to do that.
Well, that's the important thing about having an opinion on something of this magnitude, is that it really shouldn't matter if you alienate some people, if you can get the message out that things need to change, just like what is talked about with the Mute Gods.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything particularly new about that. People have been writing protest songs since the blues, and we know how that kind of gets reflected in our culture. People have used art in many ways to get a point across. So it's nothing new in terms of the medium, but it's different for me because I found a voice. I've found my voice.
Yeah, and again, with both albums, I really love the voice that you have with it. I mean, between both albums, both musically, lyrically, conceptually, it's just something that I really love to be able to listen to, while, of course, being depressed because of how real it is, but just really enjoying everything that you have going on.
Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem. So I also noticed with the new album that there isn't any, well, there's a couple, but not as many guest musicians as there was on the debut album. Was that something that you had planned out, or did it just work out that way?
I decided to go for a more succinct second album, and I think that will be with the third record too. The first record was me scanning the horizon for vignettes and ideas on how to progress. So I was taking a bit from over here and I was taking a bit from over there. And I had writing partners to get me started. But now I feel, after the first record, it kind of galvanized my thought into more of a cohesive direction. So, I wrote all the songs on the record and used just the three of us musicians, with two guest backing vocalists, my daughter and Roger's daughter, on a couple of tunes, and that's it.
And with that, I mean, having the albums pretty much released very close to each other, almost around a year's time, did you find that to be any problem as far as like inspiration comes musically, or did you just have all this material and were just able to work through that?
Well, actually, that's only a percentage of the material I wrote. I wrote probably as much again and discarded it. I had a lot of material, a lot of waste material, and some of it may even get developed for the third album. But when you're looking for a record and a collection of songs that work together, you're looking for the themes and the styles which can be cohesive. So that was another thing that helped me assemble them in the way I did. But no, I wrote, apart from two of the songs which I wrote about 9 years ago, everything was brand new.
And going back to those songs that were written 9 years ago, how did it feel bringing those to fruition now?
Well, I was waiting for an opportunity. I presented them to another project I had called Life Signs, but John Young didn't really like them. He didn't think that they'd fit in with the Life Signs direction, but I think they could have done. I think they could have been made to work. So I kept them, and I was waiting for an opportunity to slip them in. And I think I have other songs that are like that too, that I've had around for a long time. I'm always thinking that idea would work. It may need to be tweaked a bit or revamped or changed in this way or that, but usually a song will pop up from way back and I'll say that'll work, and I know what to do, how to change it.
That is just a really cool thing to hear, because it feels like all those songs are so new and so fresh that I wouldn't have guessed that a couple of the songs were written over a decade ago. I mean, that just shows the power of what you can do.
If you heard the original demos, you would be able to hear that they are ostensibly those pieces, but they didn't have Marco on them, and they didn't have Roger's finesse. They had my kind of cobbled together, hand-fisted approach at writing, but you could hear that they're those songs. And yet, when you bring those additional elements to them, and sprinkle the fairy dust on it, it becomes a production exercise and bringing it into a cohesive direction. It's quite possible to do it with most things if you've got an idea about what you're doing.
And with having them fill out the rest of the band, how much has the songs changed from their original forms, from the first album and this newest album? Have they changed much at all, having their spin on it, or is it close to what you had before?
I think they're close. I don't think they're vast differences. Stranger Than Fiction, Roger did this thing on the chorus where he suspended the chord in the middle of the chorus. It just places a whole new tension on the way that the chorus moves. That was probably the biggest thing he did on that. And he actually developed a bass line, which I had a very different bass line on it originally. And he developed this very gentle moving, supportive bass line, which I copied and recorded on myself, and that helped as well. That helps move it on, because sometimes you're too close to a song. There's something in it, but you can't quite unlock it. You've written the top line, the melody, you've got the harmonies, and you've got the form of it there, but there's something not quite right. And Roger really helped me unlock that song. And I was very grateful to him, because I knew there was something in it, and I think it's turned out quite well.
Yeah, I definitely have to. I think that is one song in particular that really stands out to me. And not just because it feels like it's the only positive song on the album, a realistically positive song, but musically, I can hear everyone kind of branch out in this really calming way to end out the album. Like it says in the press release notes, it's a ray of hope at the end of the album.
Yeah, it's a love song. It's for my wife. And I wrote it for her about 9 years ago. And when I played it to her, she cried. And I said, "It's not that bad, darling." It's kind of, but it kind of represents both of our lives having been divorced. Both of us went through painful divorces before we met each other, and difficult marriages. And it's that sense of if you ever go through it, you start to think that you may never find happiness in your life. You may never find your soulmate, because actually a life partner is like winning the lottery. There's a lot of people out there, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be with the right person. And to find the right person, to me, after my divorce, felt like it was stranger than fiction. That was the essence of it.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about life. I mean, when you go through so many different relationships, you feel like if one lasts, that it could be the one that you were meant to be with in this cosmos, but it doesn't always pan out that way. But when you do find someone that you can really connect with, it is a great feeling.
Yeah, it is. It's transcendental, and it makes your life worth living. And I suppose that is the only hope, as I see it, for mankind. If we can find that love and a reason to be invested in our societies and ground ourselves in something wholesome, then we may just save ourselves. But otherwise, I don't hold out a lot of hope.
Well, yeah, I was just about to ask, do you see any of those rays of hope in the world right now, or is it just so cluttered with everything bad that's going on?
Well, in my own world, I'm happily married and I've got wonderful children, and I'm very lucky to do a job that I love. So in my biosphere, in my little universe, I have a happy life. And it protects me. That protects me from a world that's spinning off its axis and heading into a very dark time. And that worries me because I don't want us to lose what we have. I don't want that to impact on our children and our family and those that we love. But I think about how it must have been for many people living in Germany during the 30s and the 40s, the way some, aristocrats or people who had comfortable existences were almost just horrified at what was going on around them, or even people in regular walks of life who just were observing all these dreadful turns of events that were impacting on them and the people they loved. And of course, you had many who supported the fascist regime at the time, and they would have denied the truth of what was happening. And we have also this paradigm. We have those who are in denial about what's the real implications, because as we so well know, there's a new language in the world. And it's newspeak. It's one thing can be interpreted in a completely different way or completely turned on its head the next day as if it was never said. And that's the way the political landscape is set. And it's a terrifying scenario.
From what I understand, that is now referred to as an alternative fact instead of a lie.
Yes, an alternative fact. That's a nice piece of soundbite, isn't it? That's good.
It is. Well, with you not just staying home with your family and writing, going out there and touring, whether it's for your own music or it's with Steven Wilson or with Steve Hackett, what is the feeling that you're getting going through and seeing different parts of the world right now in this landscape?
I've always been an observer. I've always traveled since I became a professional musician 35 years ago, and I've been observing the world in its constant change. I was there, East and on the west side of the Berlin Wall, going into deep Eastern Bloc countries during the Cold War, and then going again after all those things. Having traveled to far-flung countries for a long time, there's been a lot of changes, but also it seems like we've been set back into a pre-perestroika, Cold War kind of scenario where the doomsday clock is set at 2 minutes to midnight, and there's far more at risk, there's far more at stake, there's far more risks, there's far more stimuli as well. So I think the world is a far more dangerous place, even though the enemy isn't specific. It's more disparate with many threats from many quarters.
Yeah, and that is a sadly great way to look at it, because there are so many things that have gone the direction that at least I was really hoping was not going to be happening within the last year, and a lot of things are continuing to happen as well, here in America or across the world or whatever the case is. And while there are still rays of hope out there and there are people that are trying to make changes for the better, it feels like it really is going to be getting a lot darker before those things do get better, if they do.
Well, I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think that, first of all, the population growth is exponential, and no politician wants to acknowledge that because it's a vote loser. You cannot legislate for diminishing resources due to an exploding growth of humanity. So on that basis, we will be fighting more and more over what we have and not want to share it. And there'll be more people wanting what we have and not wanting to share what they have. And we need 3 Earths to actually sustain what we have with the amount of people here. We need 3 planets worth of resources to keep us, and it's not there. So we are going to become more draconian and more extreme. There won't be so much care in the community because people can't afford it. Governments can't afford it. Councils can't afford it. People will become more callous and more self-seeking, more protectionist, more right-wing. And we see this in our politicians. They echo the times by speaking the words that people want to hear, because they know that they have no choice. They have to close the borders. They have to bang the drum, because it's what people want to hear, and there's no money to do anything different. We've painted ourselves into a corner, and there's no way out.
Sadly, that is very true. And with the space program not being funded, at least here in America, with proper money, and with no planetary systems able to sustain life as it currently is, it is making life very hard for everyone here. And within the next decades or generations or even millennia, I can definitely see it going down that path, especially with people not wanting to give up the resources that they already have. They want to be able to keep those, and they don't care if others get them or not, as long as they have them.
Yes, and I mean, you have companies buying up swathes of fresh water as well. Companies like Monsanto and Nestle have very aggressive acquisition programs to buy up natural water reserves in other countries. Now, why a company should feel they have the right to do something like that is beyond me.
And something that is for free as well. I mean, it just takes going to your local stream and being able to get fresh water, that they're now buying up those pieces of land and then selling them for way more than water should ever be made for.
Well, of course, this all comes down to the power of money, doesn't it? That's
really
what it is. If you have money, that's all you need. You can do anything you want. You can buy legislation. You can buy governments. That's the way it works. And that's all that matters in this world now. Money is the only thing that matters.
And that really is the folly of man, when they realize that money's not going to be able to protect them when global warming helps destroy life on this planet, or when water runs out, or when food rations become completely scarce.
That's right. But the other thing, of course, is it's the most vulnerable that will suffer first, because we are comparatively safe in our environments. Although we will be affected, we're not living on the bones of our arses. We're not living in hinterlands or unprotected areas, and we have things like flood defenses, even though they're not as good as they should be, and we need to learn a lot about that from other countries like Belgium and Holland, who have this down. There are some amazing thinkers in the world, and the problem is they don't get listened to because they don't fit the model of where we're at right now, what people want to hear. They want to hear rhetoric. They want to hear extremism. They want to hear quick fix sound bites, and to be made to feel secure. And those are the vote winners, and people get what the people want. We've done it here in Britain, and you've done it in America. People have voted for this, and that's the way they think. And it's tremendous folly.
With that, do you think there is anything that could, outside of global disasters, do you think there is anything anyone can do on an individual level or from a country level that would be able to change people's minds to help save the world, or do you believe it is too far gone?
I think there'll be piecemeal things which will incrementally have an effect, but overall, I think we're heading down a one-way street. There's no way out of it.
Sadly, I do have to agree with you on that. I mean, as much hope as you want to have, it's really hard to have any hope when you see irreversible things happening in the world right now.
No, we are a bacteria in a watch glass, and eventually we will consume ourselves with our own detritus. We will use up all our resources, and we'll turn on each other. We'll fight each other and take the way we have from other nations, and technologies will become more readily available to decimate populations. If you consider the threats that come from all around the world, from various nations, either intentionally or unintentionally, there's a whole heap of stuff which the law of average dictates is not going to end well. It's not going to end well at all. So I have endless subject matter on which to make the next Mute Gods album.
That is the one positive that can come from this, at least on an individual level for yourself, is there's no shortage of material to write about for as many Mute Gods albums as you want to make.
Yeah, I'm a parasite. I'm thriving on the carcass of mankind and writing material about it, as the way I see it. And I don't really have any answers, because I don't think we want to hear the answers. I don't think we're capable of hearing the answers. I don't think we're capable of changing. I think that there's too many gravity-like forces on us that will draw us inexorably down this one-way street. And with the best will in the world, religion only confounds us. Spirituality is a detraction and a distraction, because what it does is it makes us focus on things and draw conclusions and look for significances that do not exist. And this is yet another reason why I have so much to say on these subjects. The whole idea of the Mute Gods is based on everybody talking in the name of deities, when all the time there is this deafening silence from all of them. There's no answers. They present problems and conundrums at every turn, and yet they're supposed to be showing us ways to live, and we contradict those at every turn.
Yeah, we really do. I mean, when it's in the best interest for the individual self, it doesn't matter what rhetoric was made from any theological god. If it's going to detract from what people's basic instinct wants, they will do anything to not have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, now that we've successfully depressed everyone that's listened to this interview so far, I'd like to end it on a more positive stance with some amazing touring that you've been doing lately, and some awesome work that you've been doing with Steve Hackett. How's that been going?
It's great. We're about to embark on the 2017 dates. We're heading over to Florida next week, where we join the Cruise to the Edge, and then we're going to Nashville and start the East Coast of America tour. And it's the 40th anniversary of the Wind and Wuthering album, so we're playing numbers of pieces from that record. I think the fans will like the arrangements we've done. They're quite faithful.
Oh yeah, and being a fan myself, it's great that it's seeing such great representation for its 40th anniversary.
Yeah, it's a wonderful record. I mean, I listened to that when I was 15, and it was, well, I think that both of those two albums, Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering, are both they're masterpieces.
Yeah, very much so. And it's got to be a great feeling to be able to play those records in representation as well, being a fan of them.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that music. Yeah, it really is. And to stand on stage with Steve doing that is great. But that's the way I felt ever since he asked me to join the band in 2009.
Oh, very much so. And having nearly a decade with such a great musician, and working with Steven Wilson as well, and another side of the prog spectrum, it's great to see all the work that you're getting outside of your own solo work. Well, I mean, just being able to fulfill all of these different sides of your creativity.
Well, I think it's because of those two artists that I've been able to do that. I think I was able to kind of reinvent myself after working with Hackett and Wilson. I think it was due to them that I was taken to a new audience, and record companies became interested in me, so that's how the Mute Gods got their platform. So I'm very grateful to them.
Oh, very much so. And with that, is there any other plans that are coming up in 2017 yet?
Well, I'm writing the next Mute Gods album. I'm going to be touring with Hackett, and I think that's predominantly it. The Steven Wilson album is being mixed at the moment, so that's more or less, going to be complete and ready for release sometime this year. That's it, really. Those three things.
Okay. Is it too early to talk about the upcoming Steven Wilson album, as far as your playing or the style or anything like that?
Well, I think I'm on 4 or 5 tunes on the record. Steve played quite a lot of bass on it. He's a very gifted bass player, and it's his record, so I know he likes playing bass. So we tend to share those duties. I think it's a record that has elements of what he's done before, but there's also new elements which will, I think, delight the fan base. I think it could be a crossover record for him.
Crossover in which way?
To a bigger fan base.
Oh, that would be very interesting. I mean, I would like to see that kind of reaction and see how people would take that on.
Yeah, I think it could be.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, again, Nick, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to me, talking about all these real issues that are going on in the world right now, and being able to help promote the brand new album Tardigrades Will Inherit the Earth, which is coming out February 24th. Before we're done, is there anything else that you would like to mention that I haven't brought up yet?
No, not really. That covers quite a lot, and I really appreciate your time on it.